Manchester City, with that huge crunch game against PSG, were 2 up early in the second half. They've lost it 4-man, Danny. How did they let this one get away? I have to say, PSG deserved it. I said from the very start, that PSG were brilliant. Their intensity was superb. They pressed Manchester City high. They caused all sorts of problems, especially down the left-hand side. Matheus Nunes, fish out of water, led it right back, and that's not his position. Obviously, Kyle Walker's gone. He clearly doesn't fancy Rico Lewis in that position now. He was almost a stalwart, as a standing for Kyle Walker last season. They just got overrun. They got rattled. They started making mistakes. They go 2-0 up after half-time against the run of play. Jack Grealish comes on, does very well for both the goals, and you're thinking that's it. The City will now kill the game off. They'll control it. They'll do what they do best, keep the ball. They couldn't do it. Ederson was making mistakes, but mistakes is in bad decisions. He's one of the best passers of a goalkeeper that we've ever seen, but he's pinging balls into midfield on a really wet, slippery surface that are a yard and a half wide of players. Players are stretching, then giving the ball away. And when a team's swarming all over you, as soon as you do that, you lose the ball in transition. And of course, they're just running at the back four. PSG, fantastic team performance, more energy, more athleticism, more intensity, and a bit more quality than Manchester City, and better game management, you have to say. They've struggled obviously in the Champions League, but tonight was a really good team performance by PSG. Yeah, I'm looking at the stats there. Possession, 36% for Manchester City. PSG doubled the number of passes. They battered Manchester City this evening, 26-7 shots. They were superb. City, if they hadn't have scored those 2 goals, it could have easily been 4-0. And they were against the run of play. It's a worry for City. You thought the Champions League was eggs all in one basket. He put a very strong team, the strongest team he could probably play this evening. From the fit players that he's got available, went with experience, and it just didn't work. For City to lose a 2-goal lead in a game of that magnitude is almost unheard of. And we were saying before that, if they get through this, Manchester City, and get through to the next stage, they can still win the Champions League. They're not going to win the Champions League playing like that, are they? Oh, definitely not. This season, I think City have lost their intent. When City used to lose the ball, there was always that 5-6-legged rule. You lose the ball, they win it back so quickly. They swarm all over you. I'm not sure they've got the legs in midfield anymore to do that. Kevin De Bruyne, one of the best midfield players in the world, but he isn't getting any younger. Gundogan isn't getting any younger. Kovacic can't do that. It's not necessarily, the best part of Phil Foden's game either. Gundogan, certainly not his game, anymore. So they're starting to lose that intensity in the middle of the park, and therefore they're not controlling games. You take Rodri out of that because of the injury, and that's why they're struggling so much. They need to find, it's almost like they've got to find a slightly different way of playing. They don't have great pace in wide areas, especially if Doku's not playing. Savio is still sort of young and can be intermittent, with his performances. It's a tough season for City. Really tough season. The league's gone, I think, we all understand that. They've got a massive game against Chelsea at the weekend. That's not about winning the league. That's about staying in Champions League positions. And then, of course, they've got a huge game next week in the Champions League against Club Brugge. They've also already beaten Aston Villa this season and held Juventus, albeit both of those at home. But even still, they can go to the Etihad with freedom. They've got nothing to lose, because they're in the playoff positions, and, there'll be so much chopping and changing position next week. It's not like you can say, well, if we draw, we get this team or whatever it may be. So they can go to the Etihad and they can play with complete freedom. And that's dangerous sometimes. Do you think City win it? I thought they were going to win tonight, and I thought they would win relatively comfortably. I didn't think the front 3 players for PSG would trouble City enough tonight. They destroyed them. City didn't know what to do. They could not cope with the pace and the intensity that PSG throw at. If Brugge come with any sort of that intensity, it's going to be an incredible game next week.